All right, well, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of The Room. I'm here with a new guest. His name is Josh. I will be introducing him shortly. But first, I just wanted to remind everyone about what it is that we're doing here, what it is that we hope to accomplish. So, outside of the church, we have a lot of topics that are questions on the minds of current Christians, new Christians, those who are viewing Christianity from the outside. And this is an opportunity to address some of those controversial or less touched upon topics in a setting, in a safe space that we like to create. And we'll bring guests on as we talk through different subjects and through different topics as we go through this. So today, Josh, if you want to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Yes. Good evening. My name is Joshua Footman. I'm born and raised here in Orlando, Florida. I partially grew up in this church, and I'm excited about being here at this podcast and sharing my experiences, my opinion, and also my point of view on today's topic. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being on. And speaking of today's topic, the title is Organized Religion the Problem? Now, as controversial as that may sound, you have a lot of Christians today, or self-proclaimed Christians today, who are skeptics of the idea of organized religion. You have a lot of people saying that they do in fact believe in God or that they are spiritual, but they don't necessarily believe in the church or the institutions surrounding religion. A lot of this is stemming from controversies that have come out of the church historically. A lot of this is stemming from controversies that come from church leadership. And so as we walk through this, we're looking at people who are saying, if Christianity is in fact the truth, why are so many churches and why are so many people getting it wrong, right? So these are some of the things that we're hoping to address. And so as best as we can, through today's discussion topic, we'll try to cover, does corruption disprove Christianity? Should Christians abandon organized religion entirely? How do we identify what a healthy church is, and what responsibility do church leaders have before God? And so our goal isn't necessarily going to be to defend every single church, but we certainly want to focus on what the Bible teaches so that we can lead people in the right direction and lead people in the right direction on this topic. So what's your gut reaction to that idea, the idea that organized religion could be the problem in Christianity? What sort of comes to your mind or hits you first?
I personally can relate to this because I was one of those people who rejected religion and somewhat called myself spiritual at one time in my life. And it came from an experience of how the church treated me. Growing up, I grew up homeless. And I was homeless for 8 years, from age 8 to 16. All throughout high school, slept on couches, slept in homeless shelters. And I was upset at the church because they knew we struggled, but yet they would always ask for tithe and offering from my mother. And she had nothing, but yet she gave. And when she gave, we struggled. And so I was bitter against the church, and I left the church. And I considered myself to be spiritual. So I wholeheartedly can relate to that feeling because it's not a rejection of Jesus. It's more so a rejection of the experience you experienced of that entity or whatever church you were a part of. And a lot of people have grown up in certain entities to where they marry their experience with the entity. Therefore, you want to divorce yourself from it to find something that doesn't cause you to think about it when you're around it.
Yeah.
So therefore, you leave whatever organization you were with, and you say, Lord, well, I still love you, but I'm not part of the church.
So with that being said, do you think somebody can truly separate a Christian experience from the church? I mean, do you believe that's possible at this point?
I think for a short time. It's not a long time. I wouldn't consider it a long-term solution to the pain that you've experienced. Short term, I do think it's meaningful and needed just because you're trying to recalculate everything and clear the table.
Yeah.
And so I think it's more of a clearing the table experience on why people do that, and I think that there is a gray area to have that experience and to have that question.
Yeah, and that's actually something that I think we'll touch on in a little bit. You know, the requirement of having a relationship with Christ to even know if you're a part of the right church. You know, you can't necessarily have one without the other.
Very true.
But some things that I do want to touch on with this topic, you hit on one of them already. A lot of the people who feel this way tends to be because of negativity they feel towards the church, or because of negative experience they had, or because they're getting hit with some of the negative occurrences of the church on the news cycle or throughout history. And so one thing that I always think of is, you know, when it comes to whether or not something is good or bad, you know, there's always like the percentages or the pros and cons. Do the cost outweigh the benefits? And I think oftentimes people disprove the church based on the cons without seeing the overwhelming pros, which is something that comes to mind as well. But a Bible verse that came to mind, it was Ephesians chapter 1, verses 22 through 23. And it reads, "And God placed all things under his feet, and appointed him to be head over everything for the church, which is his body, the fullness of him who fills everything in every way." And so this is Ephesians, you know, this is Paul writing to the people of Ephesus, essentially saying that the structure that God has intended for us is that Christ would be the head of the church. So for the people who are trying to separate being spiritual or separate, you know, being a part of Christ, and they're trying to separate that from the church, the very person that they claim to worship and follow is supposed to be the head of the very thing that they're now condemning, which is something that I think people should take into account. And the other verse that's sort of a follow-up on this comes from Romans chapter 10, verses 1 through 4. And it reads, "Brothers and sisters, my heart's desire and prayer to God for the Israelites is that they may be saved. For I can testify about them that they are zealous for God, but their zeal is not based on knowledge, since they did not know the righteousness of God and sought to establish their own," this implying they sought to establish their own righteousness, "they did not submit to God's righteousness. Christ is the culmination of the law, so that there may be righteousness for everyone who believes." And so one of the reasons why this verse speaks to me is for those who are trying to separate the sense of spirituality or being with Christ without the church, they're sort of making their own version of Jesus that appeals and appeases them. Nothing contradictory, nothing that's going to cause accountability, no community that can hold them accountable. They get to have their own personal relationship with their own version of God, and they can feel good about it all the time. But it clearly says here in Romans that you can be zealous for God, but if your zeal is not based on knowledge, you do not know the righteousness God sought to establish. So I think this is another important distinction for people who try to separate the two.
And this is, come on, sound people. This is David, the side host. So let's get the audience involved. Let's gauge our mass audience that we have. So everybody grab your phone. There's a QR code. Scan the QR code. They're going to put it on the screen. Scan the QR code. Join. And we have a couple questions we're going to ask you. Scan the QR code. Couple questions we're going to ask you. This is how you can stay participated. We got Jay. That's about it. We're waiting for other people. All right. People coming in. Got some Androids lagging. We got some Androids lagging.
Never lie. There we go.
All right. All right, real quick. First question. So kind of just so we don't deviate too much. So the first one just kind of says, that's a shout out to our logo. How would you describe yourself? All right, so they're talking about being spiritual, talking about the church. Can you separate? So just a couple, just so we could gauge who we're dealing with. How would you describe yourself? Are you a Christian, active in the church, Christian but not active, spiritual but not religious, still figuring out, or just here with a friend? Let's see, let's see. Come on, Androids. Come on, Androids.
I was the first one.
The first one. Let's see. All right, what you seeing, Dustin? What you seeing, Josh?
We have 4 that are Christian and active in church, and 3 that are Christian but not active.
I would actually say Christian but not active is probably the vast majority that goes to church today. One thing that I start to realize when I really look at those who are practicing a religion is that it's largely cultural now. The difficulty with religion and the concept of freedom of choice is that the largest percentage of people who do follow a religion follow it because of the culture that they're in. Mm-hmm. And as a result, you see a lot of people who I wouldn't necessarily call active, who identify as Christian, but if you were to challenge their beliefs, if they were to be in a situation that required faith, you put them in hot water, these are some of like the first dominoes that fall, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the vast majority right now. Not necessarily knocking it. Everybody has their own experience, but just something that I believe is a reality to sort of acknowledge. The vast majority of people may not have their faith withstand certain circumstances because they're only here for cultural reasons.
To piggyback off of that, for me, growing up in a black family, church plays a big role. Historically here in America, African Americans have always considered church more so than just a Christ thing to do. It was a place where you were seen. It was a place to where you had a societal position, to where you were respected. And so I grew up with that. And so I necessarily didn't go to church because I loved Jesus. It was because my granddaddy was an elder. My grandmother who passed away was the first female elder. My mother and my aunt sung in the church, and so I was going to do that, and everybody knew my family. And so we were popular, so it felt good. I was seen. Even though I was homeless, I was popular. And so I enjoyed that feeling, but I didn't separate that feeling until I probably hit about 18, 19. And that's when I realized, all right, why am I doing this? Do I really love Jesus? I didn't want to go to church just for 11 o'clock hour. And I actually picked Christian and active in church, not because I'm one of the deacons in church. I actually don't serve none of those roles in church. I consider myself active because I do a lot of ministry out in the streets. Housing is something I believe the church can make an impact, and that's where I feel like the Lord uses me to be an advocate for people who don't who aren't spoken up for. And so that's why I consider myself active in the church, and not because of how it's been shaped of how you're supposed to be active in church. So that's just piggyback from me.
Yeah, and there's actually something that I want to add to what you just said that really spoke to me. You consider yourself active in the church even though you didn't necessarily follow one of the church's predetermined guidebooks for ministries that people should fall into. And one of the things that I spoke about, I was at a dinner for work with an executive for another company that we work with. We were talking about people leadership, finding the right roles for people. He himself said that one of the things that he started to realize when organizing teams and structuring his organization is that there were a lot of people that were underperformers that working for a different company would have gotten fired for not performing. But what he started to realize when he spoke to them and figured out the things that they liked to do, the things that they were good at, and the things that they didn't want to do, and when he aligned them appropriately in a different department or with a different tasks, they ended up becoming high performers. And so there's a large portion of people who are actively being considered to not be intelligent or to not be active or to not care about their job or to be underperformers, who simply need a switch to a role that actually appeals to their strengths, to their talents, or what they enjoy. And one thing that could be difficult with church structure is many churches feel like they've got to follow the handbook of all these ministries, and it doesn't matter who is in their church attendance, they need to apply to these ministries. And if they don't apply to these ministries, they're not active Christians and they're lesser than and they're not giving back to the church. What if there was an actual evaluation by the church of what people liked and what they were talented at, and then the church was structured accordingly? And so each church might not look the same. This church may be good at community outreach. This church may be good at sermons. This church may be good at something else. But more of the members would be active if the church actually looked at who their attendees were and what they wanted to do versus campaigning to force people to do certain things. And so I wonder about that, and I wonder about that as you're saying it, where you consider yourself to be active even though you're doing where you're fitting yourself where your talent applies and what you're passionate about versus signing up for a predetermined role. So I think that's something for churches to think about as they think about if they feel like they have a lack of activity in terms of how they address it.
Ask the audience too now about that question. So the next question says, audience, come on. Can someone follow Jesus without attending the church? So think of it, because we'll ask the audience what you think. Can someone follow Jesus without attending the church?
Here we go.
Y'all wait on me, sorry. Yes or no? Can someone follow Jesus without attending church? So was Josh following Jesus
Pray for me, brother. Pray for
without
me.
being in the ministry in the church?
I think that's a
What
little
y'all
bit
think?
different.
I know, but he was in the church. But the question was, can someone follow Jesus without attending church? We got one more Android lagging. Come on. Oh,
What's the answers?
it ain't working now.
It's like we're going to have to do a show of hands.
Yeah, show of hands.
Yes or no?
Who said yes? Oh. Anybody say no?
Me versus all.
Me, Justin
Cool,
versus all.
cool.
So let's get some of the audience and then Dustin, let's see what you say. So who says yes, Sherilyn?
I said yes because I feel like it's conditional depending on like where you are. For example, if someone is brought to Jesus through somebody else, but you don't have a church building to go to, but yet you are fellowshipping in that way, I still think you're having church. Now, church is a people, it's not a building. But I guess I would say, in a sense, it could, if you're deliberately refusing to go to church, that's different. But I still think you could still follow Jesus whether you haven't stepped foot in a church. So, I don't know.
So I said yes, and the reason why I say yes is I look at my own work schedule. I work every other weekend at the hospital. Yeah, way too much. Island blood. But I work every other weekend at the hospital as a physical therapy assistant. And my part of my ministry at the hospital, I consider ministry, is I talk to the patients as people instead of patients. And I say, what's going on? Let's talk. And sometimes they say, thank you, because people don't talk to me, they talk at me. So sometimes it's, again, the church is a building. The church people is what makes the actual church. But you can go out and minister anywhere. You know, talking to people, just healing that hurt, whether it is physical, mental, emotional hurt. That's what Jesus wants us to do. He wants us to reach out to people, wants us to talk to people and fellowship with people also.
Yeah, so I'm going to apologize in advance for the wordplay here because it may not be entirely what you guys meant, but I overanalyze it like all things. So I believe you can have a relationship with Christ without attending church. You know, that's something that's personal to you. But can you follow Jesus? Well, I think we've all established, which I think helps my argument, so you'll probably feel less bad about my wordplay here. Church isn't necessarily a building, but I don't think that you can be a follower of Christ without connecting with a community to carry out the actions that you're brought on this earth to do. Christ knows that we're going to do a better job of carrying out his mission together than apart. And so I think attending church may get misinterpreted as physically going to a building on a regular basis or having a specific membership to a specific church. But to me, attending church means, like, for example, you were mentioning your schedule, but you're here now. You're here with a community for a cause, for a purpose. This is attending church. I think Brother Bertram, who maybe some of you who are listening don't know, but for those of you who are here, we all know that he is an active senior member in supporting the youth. And he is big on church going forward into the future for Gen Z and millennials. May not be in this designated building. It may be in homes. It may be in a park. It may be in group settings elsewhere. But as long as you're getting together with like-minded people for the mission of Christ, you are part of a church body. I think Paul, one of the largest writers for the Gospels in the New Testament, was he actively a member of a church in a specific ministry, staying in one place, going to church every Sabbath? No, he wasn't. But he was actively with different followers of Christ at different times, attending different churches, spreading the gospel across the globe. And his mission always involves churches. So as much as Paul wasn't a member of a specific church, much of the New Testament that he wrote was active letters to churches. He saw the church as an essential structure for following God, which is why he actively wrote letters to different churches. And to me, that speaks to the power and the necessary requirement of community and of church to be a follower of Christ, whether you go regularly or not. I just think it's an essential part.
I can't disagree with that.
But then again, like I said, it's there's a little bit of wordplay involved, so I wouldn't say that anybody in this room disagrees with that. I just think that my wordplay on what it means to attend church is probably different than what all of you were thinking. I think we're all on the same page with you get a large group of people together and you're worshiping Christ, that's church. I think we can all agree there.
Yeah.
So I think we can move on to segment number 2. And for this segment, I would actually like to call on our side host because he brought up an important topic about a fallen church leader that was controversial. And Josh, I would actually like to get your thoughts on that.
So that's Dave, the side host. So I don't know if you guys know who Brian Karn is. So I don't know if he's, as big as T.D. Jakes and all that stuff, but he has a following, he has a church. And so he was going viral on some of his antics, right? So I don't know if you guys seen the viral video of him like yelling at his musicians. So he sings, but yet he is like yelling at his musicians saying, you don't know the note, you can't hear me, in front of the church, in front of the whole church. And people are like, amen, amen. He's like, y'all can't hear me? Who taught y'all to play? Stuff like that, belating his musicians. And then he starts singing. And then, that kind of got me. And then just kind of, going into a wormhole or the black rabbit hole with him. Thank you. Then he has some allegations on cheating on his, I don't know if he's married, but cheating on his mentor's wife or cheating with his mentor's wife. Oh. And then he has some allegations on tax evasion or tax fraud.
Oh, boy.
So he has all this, but yet he still has a following. People are going to his church. People are donating money. And then the thing that got me is there was some gospel artists who are backing him up, saying he's still anointed, he's blessed. And I'm not judging. This is a conversation. Anointed, he's blessed, he's all of this, covered by the blood, but yet he's outwardly, showing this, outwardly showing that, and then, denying some of the allegations, and he's saying, God's not going to put me in jail, and blah, blah, blah. So that's where, with this next section, like when church leaders fall, how does it affect us? How do we hold, these church leaders? And what do y'all think about Pastor Brian Karn?
Oh, man. All right, so I have a Bible verse with this, and then I'll give my answer. So it actually comes from 2 Corinthians 5:7. And I'll pull up 2 Corinthians, I apologize. I thought I had it pulled up. But
All good. Go for it.
2 Corinthians 5, verse 7. Okay, so it says, "For we walk by faith, not by sight." And the reason why I say that is because, and I wrote this down, we want visible security. Flesh and blood leaders feel present and tangible, but Jesus requires faith in the unseen. So I'm going to say a very unpopular opinion right now. Some people may get upset with me and the many days that pass when this video is over, but I'm going to say it. I believe in order to remove this, oh my goodness, I can't believe that preacher did this, I believe the church needs reformation. And we need to remove the hero syndrome of preachers. We have to get rid of that. Because all men, the Bible says all men have fallen short. We've all fallen short. We all have secrets we don't even say. But God knows it. But if I knew your secret, I'd be like, Jared? If you knew my secret, you'd be like, Josh? And so, but what makes a preacher different? He's a man because he went to school, because he knows Hebrew. And he's no different than me. But I believe the church needs reformation, and they need to get rid of the role of pastor on how we build the hierarchy. And the moment we do that and bring those brothers down, and the reason why I say get rid of the hierarchy is because when they do mess up, we don't rebuke them, and they still maintain a following. And another group just keeps them where they're at, and they continue to do what they do. And Jesus has never built the gospel to be designed that way. But I believe as fellow brethren, there should be reconciliation. We're all going to make mistakes. But I believe if you did me wrong, we should be able to come and say, hey, man, I'm sorry. Bet. Awesome. We can move forward, because I think there should be a ministry that says, man, we hated each other. Prime example, there's a brother I could not stand, and I tell people to this day, hated that Negro. And we met each other at a time to where we were competitors. And he was pushing one product, I was pushing another. And we almost came to blows. And I thought I'd never see that guy again. Man, I joined this nonprofit, and Lord's like, Josh, you need to join this group. They're going to help you. So I joined the group. And they're like, man, we got the perfect mentor for you. And we meet on phone. And I said, this Negro sound familiar. I said, what's your name? He said, Philip. I said, Philip, this is Josh. I said, he said, oh my goodness. I said, man, you know what? God is good. There's a reason why we're here. So I said, you know what, Philip? I couldn't stand you. He said, Josh, I couldn't stand you either. But I said, God has us here for a reason. Man, I bleed for that boy. I down the cross for that boy. That's my guy. But because we were able to share the hate we had for one another, we were able to put it on the table, and realize, oh my goodness, man, I like this guy. And that's how the church is supposed to be. But we don't do that with leaders. Oh, there's no way my pastor would do that. Oh no, he'd never do that. And we keep them elevated. No, man, we got to remove the position so that way we're all equal. Christ is the only one that's above, and so that's my response to that.
And so would you say the pastor in this situation should be held accountable and removed from his position based on what transpired?
Absolutely. Removed, told, listen, you can sit among the brethren, but you're not going to be someone who actually leads the flock in final say, because pastors in our church, they have a lot of power. They have a lot of say. And you have to take it. If we're going to give someone that much power, then the group must speak up and people must make swift decisions. So absolutely.
And then I know there are some people who aren't necessarily absolving some of these preachers of their sins. Mm-hmm. They feel that the good that the preacher does outweighs the bad, mm-hmm. and then they say we all make mistakes, so it's fine. What would your thoughts be on that situation? We all make mistakes, we're all human, but the
Correct.
good outweighs the bad.
Correct. Because of the position that he has, yeah, we all make mistakes, but the position that you have, they use it as a cover-up because it's not true accountability. 2, they don't go to the person and confess and make it right and honestly say, hey, listen, I made this mistake. It's a big difference if that person can come before the whole church and say, look here, guys, I made this baby out of wedlock. I made a grave mistake with my wife. So I need to take the time out to rebuild that relationship with my wife and my family. So that way I can be the person you need me to be as your leader. Time should be taken out. If he's able to do that, then okay, yeah, let's figure it out. But I do believe there should be strong rebuke. It actually proves in America what's happening today. You got pedophiles who are in high positions, and because people are so scared of the fallout, because we hold certain people up in such high regard, that our societal norms would just come crumbling down, and we won't know where to stand. If that's what it takes to stand up for children, for people who are stolen from, scammed on, so be it. Clean the table. Start all over again. That's what the church is for.
Interesting you say that, because I remember a social media post where, I forgot who it was, but somebody during the hearings was saying that if we went after everybody on the Epstein list, society would fall apart. And every comment from every person in response to that was like, so be it.
So be it.
Every person wants it. Only the people in power don't want it. So I find that a very relevant comment. And what I will say that I'm sort of pulling from your comments is, in response to those people who say that these pastors and these preachers, their good is outweighing their bad, and we all do bad, so let it ride. What I'm getting from what you're saying is there's still a lack of accountability there. And I don't know that you can be a great leader without accountability. So I'm hearing what you're saying, and I'm agreeing. But also, one of the things that I'd also like to point out on this topic, for those who believe that these leaders should still be supported, despite their misgivings and their misbehaving in their personal life, one of the things that I've gathered from having a lot of non-Christian or recent Christian friends or friends who are new to religion is how much abuse within a church, or the perception that people who are delivering abuse in the church are supported by the church, is one of the reasons and one of the images why they don't support organized religion. So the message that I would have for all the supporters of this leader is, you look at this leader for all the good things that he's done, and you say that he's touched by the blood, but what you're not accounting for, and what you can't account for statistically, is you could probably give me numbers on how many people he's brought to the church. You can't give me numbers on the amount of people who say, I will never set foot in a church because this is what their leaders look like. And I think that's the missing piece to the puzzle that a lot of these people are missing. And so my overall point would be is that bad religion and bad leaders can lead more people away from the truth than they bring to the truth. But most people will never know it because you don't have a running count on the amount of people that you turned off. And a Bible verse that I have in regards to this is Romans chapter 2, verses 17 through 24. And in Romans chapter 2, verses 17 through 24, it says, now you, if you call yourself a Jew, if you rely on the law and boast in God, if you know his will and approve of what is superior because you are instructed by the law, if you are convinced that you are a guide for the blind, a light for those who are in the dark, an instructor of the foolish, a teacher of little children, because you have in the law the embodiment of knowledge and truth. You then who teach others, do you not teach yourself? You who preach against stealing, do you steal? You who say that people should not commit adultery, do you commit adultery? You who abhor idols, do you rob temples? Do you rob people of their tithes and offerings? You who boast in the law, do you dishonor God by breaking the law? As it is written, God's name is blasphemed. God's name is blasphemed among the Gentiles, not because of something God did. God's name is blasphemed among the Gentiles, not because of their disbelief. I'm paraphrasing the end before I read the actual end. God's name is blasphemed among the Gentiles, not because of science. God's name is blasphemed among the Gentiles because of you, referring to this leader that was spoken about in earlier verses. One of the things that I always bring up every single time is that since the beginning of time, mankind has always believed in something. It was the sun, the moon, the stars, or they made up their own gods. They always needed to worship something. Atheism, as a movement across a nation, was birthed after not the complete fall of Catholic Church, but I would say the ruining of the Protestant resurgence by the Catholic Church and the way that the Catholic Church had a stranglehold over modern Europe. The French Revolution, atheism was born from that. So these movements, these anti-Christ movements, these anti-church movements, psychology is pointing to their view of the church and the church rubbing people the wrong way and trauma within the church and trauma within cult-like behavior within the church as the culprit for birthing more atheism than people just believing that science is better than God. I mean, our very own a clergyman, somebody who's training to be a clergyman within the Catholic Church is the one who founded the theory of evolution, right? Training to be a clergyman, later on believed in evolution. So people need to be cognizant of their actions, the way that they represent themselves, oftentimes can do more to drive people away from religion than them not being touched by religion. Because if they're not touched by religion, history always tells us that any tribe of people left in the middle of nowhere, they're going to pick something and worship it because that's how we're designed.
Yep.
The minute people start saying, I'm going to worship nothing, is typically because they were rubbed the wrong way because it's actually in our nature.
Very true.
And that's something that people need to keep in mind. So, some key points I'd like to bring up to you, Josh, that we could talk about. One of which, what are your thoughts on this? Is a thought that I had. Corruption inside or within Christianity doesn't disprove Christianity, but it confirms what Jesus would happen. So thinking about Jesus going after the Pharisees and all the times that, the organized religion of the day frustrated him. What are your thoughts on that comment that corruption inside Christianity doesn't disprove Christianity, but it confirms what Jesus was trying to say? Agree with it? Disagree with it? Do you see more to it? How does that make you feel?
This is a great question, by the way, because I was actually thinking about this, I'd say about several weeks ago. So for me, this is a surreal truth. Because I had to pinch myself when you hear Jesus saying those words because I've always read about it. But then when you have a real life moment where you're like, oh my goodness, these people, they're saying they love Jesus, but then they're doing this. Prime example. I go to certain gospel concerts that I just love. And I'll say it. I mean, we can keep it honest on this podcast. So I go to Gaither Vocal concerts. I love those concerts. I ain't gonna lie. I'm like the youngest person in there, okay? Everybody got oxygen next to me. But the thing that shocked me the most is that these same people who are singing, oh, his blood, the blood that Jesus, these are the same people who treat someone who doesn't speak English as if this person just murdered someone, when all that person is trying to do is make a living for themselves. I've been on construction sites where I've seen people get snatched, where I know that man is going home to feed his family. That man isn't criminal, but the same people. It truly, I'm like, this is what Jesus was talking about? People saying, Lord, Lord, and then Jesus says, they never knew me. And I'm like, I've cried to them singing that song. But yet, those people don't know Jesus. Man, I still wrestle with it to this day because it's so surreal. Because you're like, this is what Jesus was talking about? Man, I don't even know how to deal with it, bro, because it shook my core. Because I can identify as Satanist, when I go out and I see that Gothic star or that weird-looking cross. Oh, got to stay away from that. That's Satan. But it's the same people singing songs on Z88.3. Real talk. And you're like, these people say they love Jesus, but there's no Christ in them. Man, I still don't know how to wrestle with it, man. And because it's like, whoa. So this is just a surreal moment where It's not that a pastor said it. It's reading that Jesus said this. And I'm like, man, Jesus, what you talking about, man? People say they know you, right? And they don't. So that's my response to it. I mean, I still pinch myself to it because I still haven't woken up to the reality of that statement that Jesus.
Yeah, you're referring to when Christ said, Jesus, we prophesied in your name.
Yeah.
We cast out demons in your name. And then Christ responds, you never knew me. That's what you're referring to.
Right.
Yeah.
And it makes sense when Jesus is saying the statement about, man, folk gonna be talking a whole lot about me, man. And I didn't realize there was a verse actually where we misuse this verse a lot. There's a verse where it says, don't take the name of Jesus in vain.
Mm-hmm.
We think it's saying, oh my God. That is not what Jesus is talking about at all. He's talking about those who claim to know him, but yet they act nothing like him. They don't treat people like him. That's taking Jesus' name in vain.
Don't put my name on what you're doing.
Correct. And that's why people run from the church, because people who claim to know him have taken his name in vain, and people have now rejected it because of that.
Because of that. And what you're saying just resonated on a conversation with someone that I've been talking with about how there are people who, not to choose or vilify one political party over the other, this is just an isolated example, but people who tend to identify as conservative, who want to uphold Christian and family values, they tend to be the same people that will look down on people in poverty, people of other races, look down on immigration situations. And there's a whole political issue with the immigration topic that's separate from this. We're just talking about their perceptions of the situation and their perceptions of people. They believe all these things about Christianity. They believe that they're voting to uphold their morals as conservatives, and they do this while flying in the face of empathy. And for those of you who want to dive into that topic more, we have Empathy is a Sin Part 1 and 2, in which we dove into this a little bit more on this exact podcast. So yeah, I definitely resonate with that. I've had conversations with people about that, and actually the person in particular that I was speaking to was someone who considers themselves a followers of Christ and is attempting to dip their toe back into Christianity, but because they came from a church that had cult-like behavior, they find it very difficult. And with someone in a situation like that, to look at the way some people in conservative schools of thought operate with a lack of empathy for people, and these people are like the big donors and, you know, the leaders within churches, that makes it increasingly difficult. So people need to be aware that you have good, intelligent, amazing Christians who are still questioning their involvement with a church because of the way people act.
Totally agree with that. And just one more piggyback. To me, it's becoming even more personal for me, because there's a divide actually in the church with those who say they love Jesus and their brethren right now who will be yanked out of their homes, who jobs will be taken from them. So I grew up in the Haitian community, and I have people who I consider my very own cousins. And what's happening today, where there are people in our church who I've seen look at Haitians and be like, yeah, who I've seen report, and it coming that close to home, where I'm like, whoa, I'm never going to see that person again if they get kicked out. Like, I'm never going to see that person again, or that family, or a whole church, literally. And it's so hard to wrestle when you see brethren within the church who say, Lord, Lord, we know you, baby, and man, this thing got me shook up, man. It really does. Maybe I'm just not that mature in my spiritual growth and understanding that what God has said is true. But when it's really real, you like, my goodness, man, what? Jesus knew what he was talking about. So, but yeah, that's just my quick 2 cents.
Yeah, so I'm going to follow that up with one more key point that I would like to get your thoughts on before we move on to the next segment.
Sure.
And it's a playoff of what we just spoke about. And it's something that I bring up because a lot of people will connect the prophecies of David with what the Catholic Church carried out, with the Protestants being, you know, God's followers that were being, you know, essentially attacked by the dragon. And, you know, it heavily relates to Protestant Reformation for a lot of people, the prophecies in David. So with that being said, the point that I had here was the devil can hide within organized religion because he's attempting to prove God wrong, and he's attempting to turn people away. Then there's this phrase, the greatest lie that the devil ever told was making people believe he wasn't real. And what's the best way for the devil to believe that he's not real? I don't believe that people who seek Satanism in a rap song or in a vampire shop or in Halloween, I think that's not what's turning people away and leading people astray. I think the devil hiding within the church, knowing how it operates, knowing what people are seeking, and then allowing the church to drive people away is where he could be hiding as well as in the obvious places like with Satanists and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But I'm curious what your thoughts are on that. You know, is the devil hiding within churches to turn people astray?
I would say yes. I would say yes. Yes to that. Only because, you know, he's going to do what he does. But I think for church folk, Satan's goal is to seek and destroy. And I think one analogy that made it real for me on how Satan moves is when Jesus, there's a verse in the Bible that talks about Satan walketh about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. And I don't know if anybody watches Animal Planet or Planet Earth, but I love watching that show. But one of the most gruesome realities of how them lions move, it is ugly. And when God spoke about that, that is a real thing. Lions, I've seen a lion kill his own sister that he grew up with because he's on this rage path to where he's in dominating form. And I was like, whoa, that's what Jesus was talking about? Where? That's what Satan's doing?
Yeah.
Like this, I literally just watched these two lions grow up together in an hour, of course. And then you see him killing his sister, like just in a matter of that. And then he goes and just kills everything else. And I was like, wow. And so because Satan is on that path, it makes it even more real on why he's doing it in the church, because Christ does have a real mission in this thing. Salvation is a real thing. And for me, when I realize how free salvation is, I don't have to do a thing to deserve it, because I don't deserve it. But yet it's offered to me, and I can just take it. And because God offers that, it is so real why Satan tries to do what he does to help us not realize that, so that way we can die in our own sins, to where we do believe that what I did, there's no way God can forgive it. It's because of how good God is why Satan moves so hard. God wasn't that good, I don't think the devil would move that hard. But because of how great God is and how good he is, it shows why we need him even more. And it's a reality on why he moves at the church. So it's why I believe we should sink deep when it comes to building a foundation and anchoring ourselves in Christ, because a true home actually has a deep foundation. It's actually built in pillars. Most people think homes are built on slabs. Mm-hmm. It's a true foundation is pillars, man, and that's why Jesus, I believe, is just telling us, man, the harder it comes, you got to dig deeper. And so I just think that's why the church has to withstand what Satan puts out, because there's a verse that I actually wrote about this. It said, we are more scared of dying than us believing that Christ can actually resurrect us. Not meaning resurrection and somebody came in here and shot us all dead now. That meaning resurrection, meaning God can give me a second life. We're more scared of death than me saying, hey, God, if I die here, it's all good. I know I'm going to see you again. We're more scared of that shooter than we are of saying, God, it's all right. I trust you. And if we had that ultimate excitement to where you would embrace death and say, man, God's got us. Because we're all going to die. God promised it, so why are we freaking out because people drop dead? Now, I get it. I lost my mother 12 years ago, so still haven't forgotten it. But I trust that I'm going to see her again. And that gives me some real hope, bro. Like some real hope. And I hope I'm not going off thing with this, but it's just helping me realize why I anchor so deep in Jesus. Because if I didn't, man, I wouldn't be right here talking to y'all about God, because I'd be like, man, I'm never going to see my mother again.
Yeah.
But I am going to see her again. Like,
Yeah.
I believe that. Like, I really believe that.
And to your point, the devil's willing to go to extremes to rip us, so we have to make sure our foundation is secure.
Absolutely.
I mean, where my comment came from was essentially just the warnings of false prophets that Jesus and Paul had. And that's the reason why I believe, he's going to lurk in the church to lead people astray, because these false prophets, they're not for God. They're not in the gray. You're either for God, or you're fighting against him.
I wish you could punch them in the mouth, though, some of these false prophets. Like, real talk, I wish you could. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness.
David, do we have any questions before we move on to the next segment for the group?
Host. Now the next question is going to be for the next section. I mean, because you guys talked about should pastors be held in a higher standard, but we could jump to the next section and I'll ask the audience a question.
Okay. So how do we recognize healthy churches, right? We've had a lot of conversations sort of deconstructing some of the issues, organizing our thoughts around how important religion and the church is to spirituality. So now that we've leveraged the importance of the church, we've identified that churches can lead people astray, the next logical question is, how do you identify a healthy church? What are your initial thoughts on that topic?
That's a great question. I think there's several ways you can identify a church. Now, I know there's some Bible scriptures. That part I don't have at the moment, but I do have some physical points on identifying a healthy church. One, there's great community within the church. Mm-hmm. There's a support. There's an openness within the brethren. Two, the love that Christ shows each individual, they actually exemplify that on others.
Yep.
The reconciliation is real. Because I honestly believe we all know everything's not going to be hunky-dory. Everybody's just going to be happy all the time.
Yeah.
You seem like a great dude. Love to get to know you. But I'm sure I may piss you off one time because you seem very logical, very forward-thinking. I'm like a sporadic guy, so I can see us debating sometimes. But it's all love, brother. God loves us, and so I love you, And so there should be moments where we can debate and say, man, you know what? You pissed me off that day, but I love you, bro. I love you. There was a moment I played basketball against Dada. You don't remember this. Oh, my goodness. He caught a rebound and elbowed the stew out of me, man. I had to forgive him for that. But there's beauty, man, in that. Because, we're human. So I think a church that's able to embrace and just love on each other, man, and be able to talk about the moments and laugh about it.
Yeah.
To say, yeah, man, you remember that, but hey, man, it's all love because it made us stronger. I think those are great ways. And then also leaders who are accountable, leaders who are transparent, and leaders who are eye level with the common folk, as they like to say. But I think those are healthy
servant leaders.
Identified. Yep. Yes. Exactly.
So let's ask the audience now. So, the question is similar, but it says, what's one thing that immediately makes you trust a church? And so we're talking about a healthy church, but what is one thing that immediately makes you trust a church? And so these are, I think it's a word cloud. So you send a word and it's going to pop up. Hopefully it works.
Ooh, what's one thing that immediately makes you
Anybody sending words?
Just enter some text to send, but. Oh, here we go.
Oh, type of word.
Yeah.
So the words are supposed to pop up. Authenticity. First word. The family fellowship,
Oh,
relatable.
only one word.
Oh, my bad.
It's okay. Y'all don't follow directions, but it's okay. I love you. I love you. You know what I'm saying? That's what church is about. Jared,
I
what's
don't
your
know.
word, Jared?
My word's kind of abstract.
Oh.
Couldn't find something to do with one word.
Production. Okay.
Ooh, I like that word. I like that. Getting stuff done.
Does anyone want to share why they put that word?
Yeah. Yeah, why'd you say authenticity? That's a good word.
But somebody else took my word, so I just chose fruit. Well,
Okay.
I guess you didn't take my word. We just thought the same. So I say fruit. You know, as a follower of Christ, you know, we as the church body, we are supposed to produce. Production is there too. Produce fruit. So that's just the word I chose.
Good word.
Anyone else? All right, so what I'll do here is I'll attempt to land this plane on this podcast and on this topic in particular. And in regards to identifying a healthy church, I pulled up Matthew 7:15 through 20. Watch out for false prophets. They come to you in a sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. By their fruit you will recognize them. It's the reason why I picked production. It's the reason why fruit was a big word that was picked by us, because this is a very popular verse when looking for the correct church or organization or group claiming to follow God. So, verse 16, by their fruit you will recognize them. Do people pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Likewise, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus, by their fruit you will recognize them. So for me, the reason why I put production is, what do they do for the community? What are their members like? How do their members interact with each other? How do their members interact with people? How do their members interact with non-Christians, right? How well do their members, by their actions and their words, reach other people and bring other people to Christ? And so these are some of the things that I would look for in a healthy church. It's one thing to say, I like the church, I like the music, the people were nice to me, but how are they treating people that they don't know who are not Christians? What is their activity in the community? How are they treating people when they hit rock bottom? How are they treating people in bad situations? So by that token, it can be hard to identify if it's a good church until you've attended a few times or worked in a few different situations. So my personal list would be a church that points people towards Christ instead of its leaders, produces servant leaders, as pointed out by Mark chapter 10, verses 42 through 45, helping the poor, preaching repentance and grace, doesn't elevate traditions above Scripture, doesn't seek popularity, reaches others who are at their lowest in their lives, lowest point in their lives, and lives what they preach. Because James 1:27 says, religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this: to look after the orphan and widows in their distress and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world. Any final thoughts on that?
Yeah, just to highlight, I don't know if any of you know this, but I find that all of those points are extremely important, but this is why, to me, they're most important, because you mentioned something about community. And the reason why the community needs all of those is, and I don't know if any of you know this, but I learned this as I started working in the community. I learned that churches actually burden the community. And when I learned this, it shocked me. One of the big reasons why the church burdens the community and why all those points are needed for the church to give back is because when you build a church is nonprofit, and Uncle Sam says, okay, we're not going to tax you. Guess what? Uncle Sam moves the tax that the church would have paid and puts it on the people. So when the church builds all these buildings on their property, that increases the property value. That appraiser is going to appraise that land. And guess what? That tax that's owed for the church doesn't pay it, but the people around that church do. And there are so many poor communities that are full of churches, and yet their tax liability goes up. And yet that church does nothing for them. But those are reasons why we must give back to our community, because those are things that we need to see: production, fruit, relatable, discipleship, servant-led leadership. We must give back to our people because we're costing our people. And so I don't know if people knew that, but I learned that. It broke my heart because I'm like, man, we got to do more. We got to do more. So, but yeah, just wanted to put that out there.
No, and I appreciate that. And, maybe there's even a part 2 to this, because I would love to dive more into sort of the business around church, fundraising, money, obligations to the community. We were even talking about this beforehand about, what should a church do, or should a church be educating more on how people can be more business-minded and be more growth-minded, or is that seen as, chasing money? I think there's a lot of financial aspects that are controversial to talk about that we could touch on when it comes to finding the right church. There's a lot that I learned about nonprofit organizations building and painting houses overseas and how it doesn't actually help countries like Haiti when they do things like that. I learned a lot from somebody who left a nonprofit to do something better about the support going on in Haiti. And then we didn't even get a chance to touch on, and we will next time, around cult behavior in churches and how some churches aren't properly differentiating themselves from a cult. So I think we've got more to touch on in a part 2 to this, if you'd like to join us again.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up for now. Josh, it was nice meeting you. Would love to have you again. Would love to talk more on the subject. And thank you for everyone who came today, and thank you for everyone who's viewing online. And join us for our next session.